I chose to do my What I Care About video documentary on Lake Michigan. Lake Michigan is one of the 5 Great Lakes, and I am lucky enough to live just 15 minutes away from this beautiful water body. The lake is by far my favorite part about where I live, in the city of Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Whether it is taking a walk on the lake path, sunbathing on the beach with friends, or parking my car at the infamous North Point to watch the sunrise, it is a place I will never get sick of. That is why it is so important to me, and that understanding the characteristics of Lake Michigan, as well as making sure it is safe and healthy, would be very interesting. To start off, the lake was created by glacial scours. It formed from glacial movements that scraped away rock and caused erosion by the glacial ice. This is a very common form of lake creation, especially in the northern areas of the world where glaciers once covered the land. The glacier that created Lake Michigan, along with the other Great Lakes, was called the Laurentide Ice Sheet, which was a huge continental glacier that covered the majority of northern North America, as you can see in this picture. The means by which Lake Michigan was created, that is, through glacial scours, explains a lot about why its characteristics are the way they are. For example, the depth and shape of the lake was determined by the glacier. A bathymetric map of Lake Michigan is shown on the screen, which shows the morphology of the floor of the lake. As you can see, the deepest parts are in the mid to northern area and in the middle between Wisconsin and Michigan. The deepest part of the lake reaches 922 feet and has an overall average depth of 279 feet. The surface area of the lake is very large, as well as its drainage basin. This map outlines the drainage basin area, and you can see it is about 2 times bigger than the surface area of the lake. This is a relatively low ratio for a big lake. However, the larger the drainage basin, the greater risk for contaminants to enter. So it is possibly a good thing that the drainage basin ratio is on the lower side. The location of Lake Michigan is in an extremely seasonal part of the United States, meaning that the temperature changes drastically throughout the year. These experiences change the stratification of the lake and cause it to go through cycles as the seasons change. Stratification is when a lake forms layers due to density differences in the water because of the temperature. Warm water is less dense, so it will float to the top of the lake and create the epinonymium, the layer on the surface of the water. This layer is usually well mixed by wind and has good oxygen levels. The second layer is the metalimnion, which is where the barrier between the top and the bottom layer is. This is a super stable layer and resists mixing. The bottom layer is the hypolimnion and is usually the coldest. It has a low oxygen level and is also not mixed. Just like the Lake Mendota example that was used in class, Lake Michigan is stratified most in the summer, which means the warm water is on the top and the cold is on the bottom, separated by a layer. The lake experiences overturn in the fall and spring, where the water temperature is pretty much the same throughout the lake because of the water mixing due to wind. Finally, the lake becomes stratified again in the winter. However, this time, the colder water is near the surface and the warmer water is deeper in the lake. This happens because an ice sheet forms on the top, which cools the upper layers of the water. Now that the characteristics of the lake are understood, it is important to learn about the human influences on the lake. For starters, Lake Michigan is heavily used by humans for many reasons. The first is enjoyment, as people love to swim in it, fish, paddleboard, and even surf in the lake. That's right, surfing. Sheboygan is actually known as the freshwater surfing capital of the world because the shore of Sheboygan is farther out compared to the rest of the coast of Wisconsin. This makes the winds very strong, creating perfect waves for surfing. In addition to recreational use, the lake provides for many power plants, industries, and agricultural irrigation. It also provides drinking water for more than 10 million people throughout the bordering states, including the cities of Chicago and Milwaukee. Although Lake Michigan has countless positives for us humans, that often leads to degradation of the lake in terms of health and clarity. As you can see from the map, the areas under the most human stress are all along the coast, which is where the water is most used. This creates more risk of contamination and pollution within the lake. For example, there have been chemical spills in the lake which caused beaches to close and killed about 3,000 fish in those areas. There is also a huge amount of sewage that is dumped into the lake, primarily from Milwaukee and Chicago. The estimate is over 4 billion gallons of sewage combined, which has horrible consequences for the lake's ecosystem. This causes eutrophication of the water. Eutrophication affects the fish in the lake due to low oxygen levels, affects humans as the water turns more toxic, and finally causes degradation of the lake's aesthetic, causing it to smell and look unattractive. However, even with the human-caused eutrophication, the lake is still considered oligotrophic, which means there are low levels of plant nutrients in the water, as well as a decently oxidized hypolimnia. Being labeled oligotrophic is a very positive thing and is most likely due to the fact that there is a large concern for the health of Lake Michigan, along with the other Great Lakes. The government definitely realizes how essential the water from these lakes are and has made many changes to keep the lakes healthy. For example, funding has increased for restoration projects specifically from the EPA's Great Lakes Funding Agency, as well as the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. These have focused on removing and diluting toxic substances as well as reducing the pollution impacts on areas near the shore. I think the efforts of cleaning the lake have had huge benefits and has seen the health of Lake Michigan improve greatly. However, one of the biggest challenges it still continues to face are the pollutants and waste that gets thrown in or spilled. The best way to fix it is to stop the problem at the source. Each facility or factory that is causing these pollutants must make sure they are following regulations and should limit their overall waste. If each and every company around Lake Michigan did that, we would see dramatically less spills and an overall increase in the lake's health. As far as fixing the issues with sewage dumpage, more sewage and treatment plants should be built in order to safely decontaminate the waste instead of letting it overspill into the lake. Other less expensive and more natural ways to fix the sewage problem is to increase the number of wetlands. The wetlands essentially do what the waste treatment plants would do, as they have the bacteria to decompose the waste. This is a great and cheaper alternative that not only helps the sewage situation, but would have many benefits as wetlands improve the overall habitat and stability of the climate by acting as a carbon sink. Overall, Lake Michigan is an extremely well-known, highly used, and highly appreciated lake. With that comes a lot of human damages and negative effects, but even more human help and positivity as restoration efforts are at an all-time high. People know the importance of the lake and are therefore willing to protect it at all costs. I know the health of the lake is very important to me, and I hope it continues to be a safe and beautiful place that I can keep using for my own enjoyment. But it's a demon, and if you bitch, I'm deep in. I was raised in a deep end. I know. Is that a boat out there? What's poppin'? Brand new whip, just hopped in. I got options. I can pass that bitch like Stockton. Just Josh. I'm spending this holiday locked in. My body got rid of them toxins. Sports in the top 10. I can put the ball in the end zone, put a bad bitch in the friend zone.